On this Monday night, Omicron cases on the rise in Canada.
Even if you have had the booster dose, you need to continue to be careful.
The new urgency to keep hospitals from being overwhelmed as the UK declares an emergency over the new variant.
I am apologizing to you.
Ottawa's long-awaited apology to the military's sexual misconduct victims.
My voice is no longer silent.
Narrowly dodging a deadly tornado.
The door was ripped from my hand.
Stories of grief and generosity in the U.S. Plus, Time magazine calls Elon Musk a clown, an edgelord, and a showman. So why did it declare him Person of the Year?
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. We begin with developments related to the Omicron variant, which is spreading faster than any other variant we've endured in this pandemic. Canada's top doctor says there is now community transmission of Omicron in this country. It's not just being brought in by travelers, and it has the potential to rapidly escalate in the days to come. The Prime Minister is urging people to minimize their risk.
As we look at Christmas and the holidays coming, people need to be listening to public health advice and making decisions that minimize their risks, because nobody wants to have another winter in which our hospitals and our frontline health workers are getting close to overwhelmed.
He is urging Canadians to book a booster dose of vaccine as soon as is possible. It's believed that will give you greater immunity to Omicron. Preliminary data suggests it causes milder illness, but there is much scientists are still working to understand. Jamie Mauracher has our top story tonight.
The speed at which COVID's latest variant, Omicron, is spreading could again push our healthcare systems to the brink.
It's very worrisome to think that we may be facing yet another surge in our acute care system.
In Ontario, Omicron now makes up 30% of new daily cases, and members of the province's science advisory table are worried it may not be as mild as first thought. Set to become the dominant strain in days, Omicron poses real risks, vaccinated or not.
Even if you have had the booster dose, you need to continue to be careful.
Exhausted from the last 2 years, hospital workers are preparing for the worst.
It's like a wild roller coaster, to be honest.
A ride our overworked system needs to get off. In her annual report, Canada's top doctor says this is the time to do it.
We can no longer dismiss the voices or delay necessary actions. There are increasingly urgent signs that we need to act now.
While Canada was underprepared for the pandemic, its impact has left us more ready to react and adapt. Failing to focus on our gaps, Tam says, will only cause our system to further deteriorate, and our children will ultimately pay the price.
We won't be as healthy as we could be.
The pandemic, the opioid crisis, significant mental health impacts, and the health effects of climate change. It's a lot, but there's still time to avoid the very worst outcomes.
If it takes a once-in-a-century pandemic to harness and leverage what I would call political will to make the changes necessary, that's really, I think, at the end of the day, what we're looking at.
Imploring leaders to maintain public health investment or risk Canadians' most valuable asset, our health. Jamie Mauracher, Global News, Toronto.
Cases of the Omicron variant are being confirmed all over the country now, including at universities in Western, Central, and now Atlantic Canada. As Ross Lord reports, changes are underway to try to limit its spread ahead of the holiday season.
Public libraries across Nova Scotia are carrying a new supply of COVID-19 rapid tests. Extra protection against the gift no one wants this Christmas, Omicron.
Across the country, cases are up, and we hoped to be immune here in Nova Scotia, but we're not. The Omicron variant has arrived in our region.
Health authorities connect the highly contagious variant to a COVID-19 outbreak at St. Francis Xavier University, an outbreak that spilled over into Halifax and into neighboring New Brunswick.
The last 10 days or so have shown that this virus does spread very quickly.
Even St. FX President Andy Haken has tested positive. And the confirmed presence of the Omicron variant has forced Nova Scotia to reimpose pandemic restrictions from the third wave.
But starting Friday, gathering limits, physical distancing, tightening up on the masking, all these things will be back in effect.
I know the timing couldn't be worse with the holidays around the corner. We just seem to be getting some sense of normalcy back into our lives. And now there's a new variant and things are changing yet again. This pandemic is not kind.
Exams at St. FX have been switched to online or postponed until the new year. Omicron's arrival led to a similar decision at Queen's University in Ontario. And a rise in COVID-19 cases on Vancouver Island forced the University of Victoria to cancel in-person exams. But Nova Scotia's outbreak also strengthens evidence Omicron could be less severe for some people than previous variants.
Although we are seeing high case numbers, we are not seeing severe illness, and that is very good news.
In fact, no one in Nova Scotia has been hospitalized with COVID-19 in almost a week, something authorities say is the result of high vaccination levels. Ross Lord, Global News, Windsor, Nova Scotia.
In the UK, the first death from the Omicron variant has been confirmed, and the rush is on to give all adults a third dose of vaccine. In London, Omicron is responsible for 44% of COVID cases now, and it's spreading so fast, it's expected to be dominant within 48 hours. Hospitalizations aren't rising as fast right now, but it's expected they will soon begin to go up. Today, the UK's COVID alert level was raised. The sign pressure on healthcare services is expected to be substantial. Crystal Goomansingh reports.
The waits are long, the worry growing. Omicron is fueling a rapid spread of COVID-19 cases in the UK.
It's spreading at a phenomenal rate. The number of infections is doubling every 2 or 3 days. There's going to be a tidal wave of infection.
The variant already accounts for 40% of infections in London, and more people are testing positive for the virus. It will likely become the dominant strain here in days. With all of the strains combined, more than 54,000 infections were reported in a 24-hour period on Monday. That's up nearly 10% compared to the previous 7 days. Hospitalizations have increased as well, with more than 7,000 having been admitted. 901 are in ventilator beds. The UK has also recorded its first death linked to Omicron, according to the Prime Minister.
The best thing we can all do is get our boosters. We're opening up centres across the country. We're getting in the army to help with the logistics.
Demand for the jab led to the National Health Service website crashing. There's also been a run on these home rapid test kits. While everyone is aware of the seriousness of the virus, many are adhering to government advice so they don't have to change their lifestyles.
Not really worried about COVID, to be honest.
Just get on with it. Can't stay at home forever.
Certainly for people like me, for my generation, we've had our 3 jabs, so if we go back into lockdown, what was the point?
It was this week just last year when the Prime Minister cancelled Christmas and imposed a lockdown in England. Now, Omicron is spreading faster than Delta did then. For now, the government says it's a race between the variant and the vaccines. Hopes for the holidays and the new year now hang on whether that will be enough. Crystal Goomansingh, Global News, London.
Acknowledge the pain and trauma that so many have endured, because the very institution charged with protecting and defending our country has not always protected and defended its own members.
That is Defence Minister Anita Anand delivering a long-awaited apology to Canadians who endured sexual assault, misconduct and discrimination within the military. Anand says countless lives have been harmed because of inaction and systemic failure. The acknowledgement forms a key part of a $900 million class action settlement reached in 2019. Abigail Beeman reports on the apology and the reaction.
The Government of Canada did not keep its most basic promise to you.
A 40-minute apology delivered by the Defence Minister, the Chief of the Defence Staff.
On behalf of an institution that has failed you, on behalf of those who didn't listen, on behalf of every person who took no action, we profoundly and sincerely apologize.
And the Deputy Minister.
In too many cases, willful disregard or entitled obliviousness have worsened the impacts of harm.
Who touched on her own experiences as a woman in the Navy.
I knew that if I had complained, if I had made a fuss, then I would not have been allowed to participate, that women would have been considered weak.
That stood out to Annalise Shamoun.
I found that it was very authentic.
A survivor of military sexual assault, Shamoun says it's important to hear senior leaders reflect using real human language.
That there was an accurate understanding of what people had gone through, and I really did feel that. They didn't just stop at, oh, you were assaulted or you were harassed. It was like all of the aftermath, the retaliation and the minimizing.
I feel like for the first time in 42 years, my voice is no longer silenced. That's how long it took for me to get to this place today and to be able to say that I believe the minister, the CDS and the deputy minister spoke with sincerity.
Laurie Bouchard says the emotional weight she's carried now feels lightened, but she knows there are other survivors for whom the apology may add a heaviness, and their journey must be respected.
This time, we will not fail. This is my commitment to you.
There is much, much more work to do.
Nearly 19,000 claims have now been submitted as part of the $900 million class action settlement. The deadline for claimants has passed, but lawyers urge anyone with exceptional circumstances or a disability to reach out, saying there's some flexibility for late submissions. And while 19,000 is a huge number, survivors stress the actual number of those impacted is so much larger, with all those hurt by the military's culture and their families. Abigail Beeman, Global News, Ottawa.
The BC government is extending the provincial state of emergency for at least 2 weeks as crews work to reopen highways destroyed by flooding and mudslides. And the government is also lifting the order to ration fuel. Drivers had been limited to buying 30 litres per visit to ensure essential services and transport vehicles had priority access to fuel. New Brunswick is the latest province to sign on to the federal government's child care plan. The province says families will see a 50% reduction in child care fees by the end of 2022, and they will pay an average of $10 a day within the next 5 years. Over the course of the agreement, 5,700 additional spaces will be created. Ontario, Nunavut, and Northwest Territories are the only places without a deal with the federal government on child care. A survivor story from Kentucky coming up, one family's wild encounter with a deadly tornado. The governor of Kentucky had trouble finding the words today to describe the toll multiple tornadoes have taken. The deadliest one cut a 365-kilometer path along the ground, destroying everything it hit. More than 80 people are confirmed dead, 74 of them in Kentucky. Other people are still unaccounted for. And those who survived have no home, heat, water, or power in the chilly December temperatures. Jackson Prosco is in the small town of Mayfield, Kentucky, or what's left of it. Jackson?
Well, Donna, the damage here in Mayfield is extensive and it's incredible. It's like this for block after block where houses have been absolutely destroyed. But it's like this in towns across Kentucky, and that means that people are not only grieving the loss of their own homes and possessions, but also of the communities where they live.
Piece by piece, the Cato family is picking up what's left.
Just so that we can get into the bedroom and get that stuff out.
Their home in Mayfield, Kentucky was shattered by a tornado. The family barely made it to the basement in time.
The door was ripped from my hand and we got around the corner and we were heading down the basement. All the kids were already down. My husband and I were heading down and all of a sudden we hear the front door fly through the front of the house. And we had just got to the basement floor when we heard the big boom and the whole house just erupted.
Their house, their neighborhood, and their entire town are gone.
It was very humbling to realize everything that we had, we now have nothing.
The tornado that struck Mayfield was a monster, carving a 300-kilometer-long swath, part of an outbreak of storms that stretched across 6 states. More than 60 people are confirmed dead in Kentucky alone.
Of the ones that we know, the age range is 5 months to 86 years.
Dozens are still missing, and hope of finding any more survivors is quickly fading. In some towns, 3/4 of the homes have been destroyed.
It's just upsetting, to know that that's the town that you grew up in and everything, his memories is all gone.
The buildings that survived are heavily damaged and surrounded by dangerous debris. Yet there is no shortage of people willing to help in one way or another.
Okay, I need everybody to get down.
This is video of one of Friday's tornadoes taken by Canadians Drew Taylor and Alicia Cairns near Nashville.
What we experienced was crazy. It was almost like a freight train that went over the building.
Their home was spared, and so they drove 2 hours north to Mayfield and started cooking for those who lost everything.
It's one thing to see it on TV, but to see it in person, it's pretty tragic.
In just the past few minutes, we've seen more search and rescue crews with dogs coming through these houses to make sure once and for all that there is no one trapped inside. But the job of doing that right across this state with so many homes and communities impacted is going to take some time. Donna, the governor says it could be a week or more until they know exactly the status of all those who remain unaccounted for.
All right, Jackson Prosco in Mayfield, Kentucky tonight. Thanks. Ahead, how much is Ottawa preparing to pay to compensate Indigenous children and their families? The federal government says it is setting aside $40 billion for First Nations child welfare, and that it includes money it's been ordered to pay by a human rights tribunal and lawsuits. The issue has been outstanding for years. It involves children who were unnecessarily taken from their families and communities. But this is not a formal settlement. Mike Lecouture is with me and has more details. Mike?
Well, Donna, setting aside $40 billion doesn't mean the government has come to an agreement on compensation for Indigenous children who were taken into the child welfare system. But it is a signal the years-long court battle could soon be coming to a close. Crown Indigenous Relations Minister Mark Miller announced $40 billion will be earmarked in the fall economic statement for Indigenous child welfare compensation and long-term reform. Discussions on an out-of-court settlement have been facilitated by the former chair of Truth and Reconciliation Commission and former Senator Murray Sinclair, and those negotiations continue.
We are cautiously optimistic, but they are fragile. There's issues of costing. There's issues of sorting out amongst the parties what that proper allotment of compensation is, and moving forward on a number of issues that are near and dear to the parties.
Mike, what has been the reaction from those parties that have been pushing for compensation, including fighting with the government in court?
Well, they are calling this announcement positive, but certainly are waiting until they see the legally binding document here. Now, these groups have heard promises from governments before, and the real test will be when they see how the money is being allocated and what actions come next.
I think there's always a danger of politicians trying to announce good news and leave an impression with the public that everything is fixed. Nothing is fixed right now. There's hopefully going to be a plan to fix things, but even that is not enough.
And while the talks continue, they are running out of time. The deadline to come up with a deal is December 31st. Donna?
All right, Mike Lecouture in Ottawa, thank you. Next, Time magazine calls him a clown and a genius and named him Person of the Year for 2021. A former mayor of Toronto was laid to rest today in the city he loved. Mel Lastman, who died at the age of 88, spent 3 decades in municipal government. This morning, Lastman's son said his father's health deteriorated after his mother died in January. Lastman started out as a furniture salesman. His son says he was a largely uneducated man who started with absolutely nothing except a dream. Known for his brash, outspoken style, he was mayor of North York for 25 years before getting elected mayor of Toronto when the city amalgamated in 1998. Lastman retired in 2003. Well, he's never been elected to office, but Elon Musk wields a lot of power. He is intent on transforming how we live here on Earth and off it. And it's in part because he is a disruptor and a visionary and a mass of contradictions. The Time magazine has named him Person of the Year. In 2021, that seems kind of fitting. Here's Eric Sorensen on why Elon Musk is so timely.
Where to start with Elon Musk, the awkward but brilliant visionary? Early ventures in e-commerce led to PayPal. His interest in Mars spawned SpaceX, rockets that can come and go.
Liftoff, Simplify, aim high.
Heralding a future of interplanetary travel. And then there is Tesla, his vision for electric transportation that's turning the gas-fueled car industry into a battery-powered future. And he welcomes competition if it helps the climate.
I hope that they also make electric cars so that we can accelerate the transition to sustainable energy. I'm confident in the future in Tesla, that it will do well, and I hope some of these other companies do well too.
Time magazine describes Musk as both clown and genius, the man who aspires to save our planet and get us a new one to inhabit. More than a visionary, says this futurist.
Someone who's able to execute on that vision and turn that into reality as a viable and hugely successful and profitable entity.
Musk has also courted controversy. The richest man in the world, worth over $250 billion, his sheer wealth, his penchant for shaking up the stock market, his support of cryptocurrency have all generated criticism. And there are his weird tweets, too.
Which are often self-inflicted wounds, or humor that I find funny, but not necessarily that many other people find funny.
We can also ask my mother, who's here tonight.
His personal life has connections to Canada. His mother, born in Saskatchewan, he went to Queen's University for a time, and his former partner, Grimes, is also Canadian. He's played along with some of the perceptions.
I am not evil, I just misunderstood.
But Musk's imagination knows no bounds. He wants to heal this planet, but has Mars as a fallback.
The key is making this affordable to almost anyone who wants to go.
Some worry that one person with such outsized influence may squeeze out other ideas and solutions.
It should be less about the individual person and more about the collective well-being and health of our society.
But society's mavericks are hard to ignore, and Musk is one maverick inspiring new ways to meet the future. Eric Sorensen, Global News, Toronto.
And that is Global National for this Monday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is the Forks in Winnipeg. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to viewers@globalnational.com. Thanks for watching. Hope to see you here again tomorrow. Take care of yourselves. Bye-bye.